The Supreme Court of Appeal has ordered the corruption case against ANC MP Bongani Bongo for retrial. In February of 2021, Bongo was acquitted by the Western Cape High Court after then Judge President John Hlope found that there was insufficient evidence for a guilty verdict. Bongo was accused of trying to bribe Parliament's Eskom inquiry evidence leader, Ntuthuzelo Vanara. Let's unpack the story further. We're joined this afternoon by the Executive Director of Corruption Watch, Karam Singh. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for coming on. And the legacy of the then Judge President just continues to take a battering, right? Acting Judge John Smith saying that Hlophe made mistakes of law when he found that there was not enough evidence to convict Bongani Bongo. I mean, can there be more of an indictment of a Western Cape Judge President to make mistakes of law?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think when this case was dismissed in 2021 at the first instance, without the defense needing to even answer the charges, I think there was a lot of shock out there. This seemed like a relatively straightforward case. It was a high-profile case. Fundamentally, the case rests upon the testimony of one of the evidence leaders in the Eskom inquiry, who testified very clearly that that there was an attempt to bribe him by Bongani Bongo. Mm-hmm. Obviously, subsequent to this, unrelated to this matter, Judge President Hlope has been impeached. But it was shocking at the time, and perhaps not that surprising now that the SCA is ordering this matter to go back for a retrial.
Yeah, the trial court finding that, or rather the Supreme Court finding, is that the court was oblivious to this unequivocal and overt evidence of the commission of the crime of corruption. I mean, how do we understand this? Because the testimony of Vanara, the Eskom inquiry evidence leader, Ntuthuzelo Vanara, was unequivocal, right? That he received several calls from Bongani Bongo to try and stall the Eskom inquiry. First, it was about faking an illness, and eventually it got to the point of him saying, "Name your price."
If there ever was a prima facie case of corruption, this testimony would support it. There were, a number of reasons for Judge President Hlope to dismiss the matter. There are legal issues around how you treat the testimony of a single individual. But we know that prosecuting corruption is incredibly challenging. Mm-hmm. That the state has a really difficult case when it comes to these complex cases. But when you have such clear testimony, there's really an obligation then on the defendant to offer some kind of an alternative explanation, or to deny that these conversations ever took place. So it'll be interesting to see how the matter now plays out before the trial court. But, there's been a lot of talk about state capture. The State Capture Commission didn't look into challenges within the judiciary. It's a very checkered track record that Judge President Hlope had. And, as we said, when this matter was initially dismissed, I think there was shock that this could not be the correct judgment. So 2021, now we're in 2024. The wheels of justice move very slowly. We've seen very few prominent politicians or MPs convicted of corruption, and one will watch now very closely how the MPA is able to push this case to a successful conclusion. Yeah,
I wonder what this also says in your view, Karam, and does it say something about previous cases that the then Western Cape Judge President John Hlope would have overseen? He's now been impeached. There's now this other blight, this additional blight on his reputation and on his legacy. Do you think it affects any other cases that he would have decided on?
So difficult to comment on that in the abstract. There's so many cases that go through the Western Cape High Court. Judge Hlope, in his long tenure on the bench, would have sat on any number of cases, and I think some of those cases may still be subject to appeal. May be subject to the same type of scrutiny that this case was subjected to. but it's very difficult to comment upon that in the abstract. It's significant that such a prominent jurist, such a bright star, has been impeached, and his complicity in state capture, in aiding the case of Jacob Zuma, has become common cause now. And I think it's if this had emerged in a context where the impeachment hadn't yet happened, it may have come into that record. But I think now, it's time for the Western Cape High Court to move past the Hlophe era, and hopefully what you're saying isn't true. But I think difficult to comment in the abstract.
Yeah, certainly. And then of course there's the issue of Bongani Bongo, who will now go through this corruption case again. He's an ANC MP. We're in an election year where several promises have been made about turning the corner insofar as corruption is concerned. Promises of a, shall we say, new dawn. This must certainly be a blow for the governing party.
The governing party finds itself in a very difficult situation. It doesn't have a good track record. It's obviously not in a position going into this election to run on corruption or its record on anti-corruption. I think it is a blow to its reputation. I think Mr. Bongo must welcome this in terms of an opportunity to put his case forth and to clear his name. One hopes that this process of cleansing the governing party's lists of implicated persons, there's follow through on that, so that when the voters do go to the poll at the end of May, that they, if they do choose to vote for the governing party, that they're not doing so in a context where they're bringing implicated persons back into parliament. So it's a difficult case for the ANC, but I think broadly, I think the ANC doesn't have a great track record in terms of being able to say clearly that it's been decisive and definitive in terms of its approach to fighting corruption and clearing its own ranks of corrupt individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Karam Singh, let me thank you for your time this afternoon, the Executive Director at Corruption Watch, joining us there. That Supreme Court decision around the corruption case of ANC MP Bongani Bongo, he must now go for a retrial. And of course, there are various things to read from that decision.